council had, and I sent an email out on with some help from Janet and Lauren on Wednesday or Thursday. If council would like to discuss those or any other kind of outstanding issues from last time to start with.
Questions from councilors? No, it's good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
For your prompt response.
Thank you.
Thank you. On top of that, for sure. Appreciate it. All right, we will move on to CIP. Where do we start here? Where are we starting at?
So would you like to start with general government and just go
Yeah, sure.
through?
Yeah, we'll start
Line by line?
Yeah.
I think there's broadly sort of two things I just want to draw council's attention to before we get underway. There is money in proposed $150,000 in the general government side and the facilities side for more money for Chapman Street, that building improvement. So this is on page 6 and 7 of the CIP.
It's early in the morning.
Yeah, no, understood. So that would bring the total sort of project budget from the current year and next year to 330,000, I believe. And another thing to bring your attention, this isn't really maybe a discussion for today, but I do want to sort of maybe just put a pin in this and revisit it in the next few months. Last year, the General Assembly adopted a bill about new standards for animal control facilities. And we have until 2029, the end of 2029, I think, to implement that. I suspect there'll be some extensions too, because it was a fairly onerous requirement. Starting next year, I did put in basically $500,000 a year for that project, and it could take on many forms. But basically, it requires a certain level of cleanliness, a certain level of separation between kennels and temperature controls and things of that nature, and air circulation. So it's something, sort of a slow rollout with the police department and facilities that we're starting to think about. But that's not a request for next year.
Thank you. Any questions on this page? Councilor Drago.
Regarding the Chapman Street, appreciate the fact that we're putting money into it, but when are we going to make a decision as to when and how and what?
So at this point, we're trying to coordinate with the fire department on this. As I said, it is a facilities and general government budget allocation. And so I know that the fire department would like to, proceed with design plans. I know that our facilities department has concerns about just going to that architectural plans right now and do some interest in doing some environmental work, some structural analysis, things like that. So we are working with trying to coordinate with fire department to get that right. And I think there's a broader question too about what it will look like, what exactly we're doing. And I think that's what we sort of need to reach an agreement on.
And that will come to council.
Yes, absolutely. And so those are the kinds of things. I think the fire department certainly has storage needs. I think other departments have storage needs broadly that Chapman could be used for. I think all options are on the table. I think it was just interesting to see how the process plays out over the next few months.
Including, I know there has been some discussion of the fact that it's somewhat historical.
Mhm.
It's not having it just be like a warehouse, but maybe do something for the town with it.
Yeah, I think,
Residents.
I think all options are on the table, and I look forward to kind of working with, the fire department, all the stakeholders to get a plan that works for everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilor Drago. I was going to ask the same questions about Chapman Street. I guess just the other two questions I had in general property improvement and transfer to technology fund. You've proposed very minor increases. Can you just speak to why you think those increases are necessary?
Oh, the transfer technology fund?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's just for the ongoing, or whether it's computers or other IT, just the replacement of IT infrastructure. I believe $450,000 is the recommendation from Scott, to, just sort of what we need to do to keep up with the Joneses. Maybe that was not the expression I was going for, but like, that's sort of what, I think if you cut it below that, you ever kick the can down the road issue, but certainly it's a line item that, I think just as last year, I think it was reduced at, obviously all options are on the table.
And general property as well. Is that something we're lagging?
General property, yeah, no, so the budget, sorry, I have a spreadsheet that has the balance with all of this stuff. General property improvements, we have $151,000 in the balance right now. So this is for everything that Joe does. That's, that's not a major, it's like every minor project that Joe does. So it's just this ongoing, a duct has to be replaced here, some new drywall has to be installed there. And it's just an ongoing, basically kitty.
We're finding that we're lagging behind those needs. I'm just asking relative to the increases requested. And both those.
No, I mean, I think it's 150 for property maintenance, right? Or
125, I guess.
125, yeah. So I think what you're seeing, and Joe, if you want to speak to this a little bit, that, you're spending essentially your allocation. There's a little bit in reserve for, any minor project that becomes more major.
Good morning.
Morning.
So the allocation or the requested allocation for the past few years has been the same. Last year, council reduced that a little bit. We had a little bit of a bigger surplus in that account. It's the reserve accounts that we use to utilize unexpected repairs or projects that come up, and planned projects that are a little larger, that have come up, not unplanned, but there's a need and we plan for them, and it may take 2 years to come to fruition, but that's the account that we use to pay for those. I have roughly $150,000 worth of projects planned in that account. Currently, some are on hold or have been on hold in the past, and are trying to move forward or put them back on the pallet so we can get them accomplished. I can give you examples of some of those things if you need to.
That's fine.
That's
perfect. Thanks, Joe.
But going back to Councilor Plord's question about the technology reserve, Scott Hoagland, can you upgrade Scott Charlotte as a panelist so he can just answer that? You stay in the front row, Joe. Or so, Scott, did you understand the question?
I believe the question was, oh, shoot, my video's not working. Hold on.
There you are.
We see you.
Okay, I can't see myself, but that's fine. I believe the question was that,
So the question was basically that last year we budgeted, or for the current year in CIP, we had 410,000 for transfer to technology funds. And this year we're asking for $450,000. Can you speak to that a little bit?
last year, it was reduced by $40,000. So that's why the number. So, I mean, we're always resourceful in the IT department. So and I know there's competing needs, so we can always make do, but we do have a list of projects. Some of them are large, and that's what we do. Just as Joe mentioned, it's a taxable reserve fund. We have some big projects going on with our virtualization that we're already pricing out. These are projects that we planned for over a 7-year plan. So.
Thanks, Scott. Thank you, John.
Counselor Mankey.
Can you just speak a little bit about the town hall annex renovations for 75,000?
Yeah, so this would be for the basically other half of the OFI building. So not the EOC, so the 2/3 of it to the east. And so I think we have $75,000 proposed for this year and for next year. And that would be for a fit out for for that facility. Now, we wouldn't really do anything. So if everything goes as planned with OFI, or with the EOC build out. So we're a few weeks out probably from going out to bid, waiting on the state to sort of sign off on our plans. Or a few weeks to, go out to bid sometime early spring so that we're kind of shovel ready, I believe by, I think sometime mid-June, which is when the OFI, the existing lease runs out. So, and then hopefully by about this time next year, 2026, we'll have finished the EOC. At that point, we can kind of turn our attention to what happens to the other 2/3 of the building. How do we fit it out? Do we rent it? Do we use it internally? That's what it's for. So it's sort of a to be determined pot of money, but I think that's what Joe thinks we need as far as getting it to be a usable space.
Thank you.
Councilor Draco?
Yes, I noticed on the department requests, there were 2 requests for the library HVAC replacement and library security. And yet both of these weren't funded. It's 150,000 for HVAC and 75,000 for security. Neither of them were funded. And I'm just thinking back to the presentation that we received for the proposed addition to the library. Are you not funding it because you think that there's going to be replacement? I mean, but it
I
sounded
think,
like there were
I think
immediate needs.
the issue is we need to wait and see what happens with this, but if there isn't, Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, but if there isn't any movement on a renovation, that at some point we have to think about if we maintain the status quo, security, HVAC, those kind of things. So that's why it's not proposed funding for next year, but it's sort of more of a placeholder. Keep it in mind. These are things we'll need to think about if we don't.
But should there be like, massive leaks or something like that, before that time, there will be money in Joe's fund.
So that's what those reserved accounts are really helpful for us to have.
That
funding
property reserve fund
Yeah,
that she
so I
was
have
talking
a
about.
mechanical reserve as well as a property improvement reserve. So when, like you said, things like that occur, those are the accounts that I utilize to fix those.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Rada?
Yeah, I think I'm just piggybacking off of Councilor Budraco, in terms of the library, because we know that there has been significant issue just in the past, month and a half, where books have been damaged and there has had to be some movement of stacks. So I was just concerned that maybe sooner rather than later, and I'm thinking beyond the renovations that we've heard about, that there might be work that needs to be done more immediately. And could we shift, was there a thought of shifting some funding into the 25-26?
A fair share of the mechanical systems in the building are original to the construction of the building. They're serviceable. Some of them are lacking the ability to be upgraded to kind of where we want them to be.
Yeah.
But we maintain them, rigorously to a point that I think that's satisfactory for everybody and our needs. A major replacement in that building has its challenges. I think I'm comfortable with maintaining the building with the funds that we have. If there's still some things that are up in the air with the building, I don't want to cut our nose off to spite our face type of
Right.
thing. I mean, we can look at it, but I think I'm comfortable proceeding in this fashion.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Nagel?
Just to piggyback on what Councilor Rada was just saying, my understanding is that there is ongoing work to fix what was the leaking problem in the library at the moment. Is that true?
There wasn't a leak in.
Or whatever
There
was happening.
there was a-
I know books were moved,
Yeah. there was a-
whatever, and the intention is to move them back. And is
Well,
that taking place? That was my understanding the last that I.
That has all been completed. So the work has been completed. I'm working with the library director for relocation of some of the books on the top shelf
Mhm.
of that location because it reduces our air circulation. So Lisa and I work very closely to try to do the best we can within the situation. But the work that you're referring to has been completed last week.
I just want to be clear that had been taken care of or was being taken care of as much as possible. And this is a separate issue in terms of what may or may not happen in terms of a renovation to the library.
That issue has been taken care of. Yep.
Okay, it
If I'm-
just
I'm not
felt
sure if I
everyone should
understand.
know that you're not waiting until
Oh,
to
no,
find
no,
out.
of course not. No,
No.
yep.
Okay.
We try to be as proactive as we possibly can.
Mhm.
Sometimes unfortunately, there's circumstances that we're reactive. And we address them accordingly, plan with the director and move forward.
And
I mean,
just
just to reassure everybody. Sorry.
There was an email, there was a memo that Joe did. I think I sent it around last week that I went into some detail about some of the details of the work orders. I think is an interesting read. I think to reiterate what he said is the work in the library is, there's issues with it because it's a, 40-year-old stuff in there, but it's manageable for the most part and keeping up with the work orders.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
Only question I had, Jonathan, was, you were talking about the future animal shelter, animal control situation. Is there, I assume there grant funding out there possibility
Yeah,
for that?
I'm sure, I'm sure there
Okay,
is. I mean,
cool.
like the STEEP grant, for example, the Small Town Economic Assistance Program, I think that's something that other municipalities have been sort of circling around for this.
Yeah,
But it is an unfunded mandate, no question. And that's why I think, I don't mean to minimize, animal cruelty or anything like that, because it's a serious issue, but the level of compliance that all towns need to come into with this is onerous, and absent state funding, it's going to be pretty much impossible for us to get there.
well, I think, yeah, to that point, I think, like you said, I think, we look at grant options, and I think we should lobby the state to get some money into that for us too, because it's a one-time expense
Yep.
that we gotta get to, but appreciate that. Any other questions from councilors on this? Counselor Tiniaka?
Oh, yeah. I just had a question about the, where is it? The flood control system dredging. Looks like the department asked for 700K and then we reduced it down to 100K.
Wait, I'm sorry, are you
What
on?
page are you on?
Oh, did I skip ahead? Well, maybe I did.
You want to hold that one for until,
Yeah, I think you should.
All right,
Yeah.
come back to me. I'm sorry. It's early.
All right, so we're gonna move on to page 8 and 9. Public safety CIP. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.
I don't think you're gonna go too far, though. Any questions from counselors on this? Yeah. Counselor Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple things here. So the fire company to apparatus pay flooring obviously was requested. Can you just speak to what that request was, Jonathan, and why you think we can hold off for the?
yeah, so there were two bay floors that have issues. We just talked about the Station 1. So we transferred the money, so that can be done. Well, at this point, probably in late the end of this fiscal year. Tom LaPierre is here going to talk about like specifically the condition of it, but I think it's like linoleum tiles in Station 2. Is that right?
Yeah, we went down many years ago, and we've had with it for quite some time. We've worked with a couple companies, Lauren and Jonathan. We've gotten some pricing. You kindly transferred all the funding that we had left over, and we're hopefully going to move forward on getting Company 1 done. And we had an agreement with Jonathan that if we took care of one, Company 1, 2s can wait for a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, at some point it becomes a tripping hazard, it becomes it's both maintaining the building, but it's a tripping hazard, that kind of thing. Am I right? Linoleum tiles?
Company 1 they're like rubber square tiles.
Okay.
that Were sold to us that they were lifetime, and
Jeez.
unfortunately.
They lied.
So we're trying to repair that tripping problem because the firehouse does get a lot of use. And we've been working again, with Jonathan and Lauren to get that taken care of. And we're just gonna put a painted floor down. The other floors are not tiled like that. They're just painted, but we need to have the upkeep on them to keep them in good repair.
And just one other question.
Go ahead.
I know obviously this isn't a request for this year, but it's new, so might as well ask about it. The Emergency Management Rehab Shelter says a little bit about what that is. for an emergency circumstance, for, you know,
Oh, yeah, this is that tent, is that what this was, right? That was, yeah, so the
That's a
cert would,
cert asset.
yes.
I'm gonna be honest, I'm not hundred
It,
percent
it,
familiar with
it,
that.
yeah, it's essentially, as I understand, I think, the way it was described to me is almost like a wedding, kind of like a wedding venue tent, you know? And but you would use it like at the extravaganza, for example, and you could have emergency responders parked out there with, like, for heat stroke and, you know, as an alternative to having an
It was-
ambulance. Yeah,
If you wanna,
Yeah.
last year's extravaganza, we did use the state asset that's available. And that was set up right over by the EMS tent in the front there by the ride
Yeah.
ticket gate, if you will. There was a big gray tent. It's fully air conditioned. And it can be set up as a triage area or a shelter area.
so that tent that we used, we already have that, or we
do
rented
not.
that?
What we used was a state asset.
Okay.
The fire department did not put this in, so that's part of the EOC budget, which isn't, we didn't create that. So I can really only speak on the 2 or 3 things that we have listed for this year.
yeah, I think it's, you know, let's keep it as a placeholder here. I think it's an interesting idea. I think with all the things we're juggling with now, it's not a priority, but I mean, I shouldn't say not a priority. It's not the highest priority. But definitely a nice to have down the road.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions on public safety?
Now, the only thing that I want to comment on, I know that I believe you funded the gear. And the only question we had, knowing, and I know Draco and yourself, Jonathan, you brought up that it hasn't been clear cut as to what we're gonna do with Chapman Street. And I know there's funding from our side of the budget, and it sounds like it was increased on the government side also.
Yeah, technically the current year's allocation was in the general government side as
So-
well.
That notwithstanding, we're just concerned that if that building is taken away from the fire department piece of our stuff, we'd like to see that another one of our funding opportunities for the fire department be put in that place. And we would recommend going with the washers and dryers to keep our gear clean and use, you know, get the most useful life. So if it was that we're gonna lose that building and it's gonna become a town asset and not a fire department asset, and I think, like Jonathan said, there's discussions that we still have to have. We'd like to see that be taken into consideration, that one of our projects continues to get funded to keep moving along. And I believe that project is even less money than what is being currently funded for Chapman Street.
Any other questions on public safety, guys? All right, seeing none, thank you. Thank you for being here. Hopefully we can get the parade now. All right, moving on to public works.
AJ, was this where your question was?
Yeah, somewhere, it's a little further down, actually.
What was your question again?
See if I could find it.
Is it about the flood control system?
Yeah, the dredging
okay.
system, yeah. Well, I was just gonna ask, the department requested is around 700K, and then we brought down to 100K, so I just wanted to see if there was a specific need for that.
I think, well, we look, I don't see the department request in front of me, but I think this was, if memory served, we have in the balance, Janet, what was the balance of this fund of the?
It's a little further down from like 17, I think.
Oh, it's on page 17.
Yeah, it's a little further down.
Oh,
Wait, we get there. No,
10-11, right?
Yeah, no, ignore me. This is from 2014. Just
Okay,
ignore it.
all right.
It's fine. I'm like,
It's early Saturday.
yeah.
I'm gonna
I'm getting lost in the fray.
Counselor Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple quick questions. So, first, sidewalk pavers and curbs maintenance. I know last year, there was some back and forth. Department had requested a larger sum and came back and we realized that sum wasn't necessarily needed to achieve those goals. I just kind of wanted to check in on how the funding that we allocated last year, how that's been going. I know there was plans to massively increase our sidewalk repair program. How is that gone?
Chris, you wanna address that?
For the record, Chris Zabidio, Town Engineer, Rob Hillman, Superintendent of Highways.
Morning.
This question had to do with the sidewalks. Well,
That's right.
who am I directing this at? Yeah, okay. So just to kind of clarify your question, last year we reduced the sidewalk budget because I didn't have the staff or the resources to do the work we would like to have done. So this year we have staff and we have resources, so we're going to take a little more aggressive approach to the sidewalk program. We have a number of areas in town where we've had various strip and fall lawsuits that are pending. We've had areas that I'd like to really see us get on top of as far as replacement. Some of our walks are obviously 100 or so years old. The older parts of Main Street comes to mind. And so our plan is to try and tackle a big chunk of that this year.
How much of the allocated funds in that line item did you use last year?
Last year, we replaced most of the walks that we replaced with, we had a 3-year contract that I inherited when I started here that had, it was in its 3rd year. So that was actually 2023 that contract expired. So coming into 2024, we did work that was part of the LOTSIP grant on Robbins, and we did a little bit of replacement work with small dollar values I didn't have to go out to bid with. And then I also did reinstituted a program of hiring a contractor that does grinding. So if you have a sidewalk that has, say, a 1/2 inch or smaller toe trip, if you want to call it that, but the slabs themselves are structurally sound and otherwise in good shape, they just happen to, for whatever reason, have a differential shift in them. This contractor comes in and cuts that flush, so it removes the tripping hazard. And it's a very cost-effective program. It is by comparison to a full replacement of the sidewalk, it's probably less than 1/10 of a unit cost for that. So if a sidewalk replacement is, $12 a square foot, this guy comes in and cuts that toe trip down for something like a typical tripping area is less than $1 or something like that to do a 4-foot wide walk. But he does a whole general area for us. I have him come in, evaluate the neighborhood. He says, okay, here's my list of stuff I'm gonna do. It's gonna cost you $20,000. I can start in 3 weeks. I say, go. And he tells me when he's done.
That's great. I remember the request last year, the initial request was say again? Oh, sorry. Was, obviously this is, I'm sorry, I will relent in just a minute, but.
No, you're good, you're good.
The initial, obviously it's an increase, but the initial request last year was something like 475, 425, and it was cut.
To be honest, I copied the number from the previous request.
Oh, was it? Okay.
So I
Great.
was placeholding my
Okay.
budget last year because I truly didn't have a handle on how this process worked last year.
Understood.
I'm getting there.
Got it. Got it. And then just briefly, New Britain Ave and Garfield Street, I know portions of those projects are being completed with grant funding. So how does this match up with that grant funding? What is this used for and the grant funding's used for, et cetera?
So the grant funding part of the Garfield project is the grant we got, I think it was 7, maybe 8 years ago now.
Connectivity grant?
Community connectivity grant, and it's primarily sidewalk work. So we're funding the sidewalk part of that reconstruction project, which you guys will see as a courtesy submission, so to speak, as soon as I've finished reviewing the draft plans, which are on my desk as we speak. So when we get the items that I have identified as needing to be adjusted a little bit. We'll have a PDF made up. We'll forward that to the other department heads that are interested and the council, obviously. So you can see it ahead of time, Board of Ed as well, because their bus garage is part of this project. So anyway, the community connectivity grant part of it is the sidewalk improvements and the rapid flashing beacons and some other landscaping. I call them landscaping because they're more off the road. Then the road part is CIP, the parking lot is CIP, the bus parking lot is Board of Ed CIP. and the
But
electric vehicle
just to
charging stations
clarify that,
is
the,
Grant.
there's no money budgeted moving. We'll be finished by Garfield Street in August or something. There's no
Oh, I
money
sure hope so.
budgeted for Garfield for. There's no money for next year budgeted for Garfield.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think maybe, but the New Britain Avenue, I think
So
that's,
New Britain Avenue is another grant,
Yeah.
that goes back 5 or 6 or so years. Originally it was a Constance Lee grant that for reasons I simply don't know before me, we shifted to the New Britain Avenue, Elm Hill District as a streetscape beautification project. Now, that grant, we just finished our meetings with the primary stakeholders. There's been some changes to it over the years. My predecessor had 26 or 7 plans drawn up, none of which really got any traction with the property owners. But we had a recent development in that we have a property owner who is willing to take down the dry cleaning building that's been vacant for 20 or more years. And by doing that, it opens up that area as a corridor to the area behind the fire station, which we had proposed a gazebo and a picnic bench at. So now with this open corridor that they're going to use for parking for the Elm Hill Pizza and the Giovanni's Bakery, we have right now an informal agreement with that property owner to use that as an access to the back of the fire station for the seating area. So it benefits these two eateries in that their people who can come out a nice day and go sit at the picnic bench and eat their food. And it helps with that scope of work.
Chris, I want to focus the conversation though on the CIP request. So we have a grant that's being repurposed that we
Correct.
talked about, right? That urban design grant that's being repurposed, but
Yep.
there's $100,000 annually for the New Britain projects, New Britain Avenue projects. So to address Councilor Plord's question, can you talk about how the $100,000 per year will be used over and above the grant funding?
All right, so that's a little different question. This grant status currently is an earmark where we've been awarded the grant, but the project hasn't been accepted by DECD and Connecticut DOT as yet, so it's not been issued a commitment to fund letter. So until the commitment to fund letter comes through and says, this money is now yours for this project and will consequently follow with a contract, it is not a real project yet, if that makes sense to you. So we have the money set aside for us, but it's not yet 100% committed to the project yet. So we have apparently been putting in a CIP request for this project in the event that the grant doesn't come through. That's my read on this.
It's a contingency.
I would call it a contingency. And if we get the grant and we go forward with the grant funding and the project goes well, then the CIP request can be pivoted to another project.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Rada?
Yeah, I'm just a question regarding public building resurfacing program. And yeah, obviously it's ongoing. What has been done this year and what are we looking forward to in 25, 26?
So this year, that is the fund that we'll use to do the town hall parking lot part of the Garfield project. So the lot that was used for the equipment storage for the building construction, didn't get repaved afterwards. So it's in rough shape, as we all aware. And so this project, that fund is going to fund that part of that Garfield Street construction project. So that'll be, we'll strip off the asphalt. We're going to do a little bit of drainage improvement there. We're going to regrade it so that the drainage, storm drainage flows to the structures we have there now and just kind of make this function a little better.
Thank you.
Councilor Mickey?
Hopefully it's a simple question with a simple answer.
I'm
I'm sorry. I thought I heard my name.
That's okay.
Go ahead,
That's okay, Dave.
please.
I don't see Rose online here, but I just asking for her. Can you explain this flood control system dredging? Jonathan?
Oh, yeah, so there's so five ponds, dredging out 5 ponds. What do we have for that? Yeah, $100,000. I don't know how much that's gonna really get us as far as dredging. Dredging is expensive to actually let all of the spoils dry out, takes a long time. But Chris, can you talk about what ponds those are?
So this item is primarily for the Piper Brook flood control project that we did, I'm gonna say is probably 15 to 20 years ago. Initially funded by a NRCS DEP project to construct that flood control area. And then we became responsible for the maintenance of it. So this item is to fund the maintenance as it becomes required. So we don't dredge every year necessarily, but when we do dredge, as Jonathan mentioned, it's an expensive process. So if we continue to fund it at a routine rate when we do the work on, say, a 3 to 5 year routine, and it usually gets triggered when we do our annual inspection with NRCS and DEP, which is in the fall, October typically. This past year, for instance, with the drought, the water level was down. It was obvious that the silt had begun to accumulate. So that was one of their notes on their report, that we were going to need to dredge that this year or next.
So we're just putting $100,000 in this fund.
Yeah, there's already 100,000 in there. This is coming back. Apologies.
Right.
Yeah, so we'll have essentially 200,000 for this project. Yeah.
So the expensive part has to do with, for some reason that I really like to dig into further. DEP considers this dredging material to be slightly contaminated, so it has to be handled as if it were contaminated soil, which means it has to go to a facility that will treat that. So we take it out of the site, we put it into a containment area, we let it dewater itself. Basically, gravity just drains the water out of it when it's dry enough to ship. So we're not paying to ship water, we're paying to ship soil. That goes off and gets, typically it's incinerated.
Counselor Nagel?
Yes, I just wanted an explanation as to what survey instrument replacement was or is. There is a listing for survey instrument
yes.
replacement, and I'm
So-
not quite certain what that is.
Our survey instrument, if you should happen to see my surveyors out in town, now that I have them, is 25 years old. And what that means to us is that if or when that machine were to break, there's no longer a part supplied for it. If it breaks, I no longer have surveyors unless I rent equipment. So this is an item that, to be honest with you, we should have been putting a small amount of money aside every year for the last 25 years, so that when this day comes, as it did, that we could replace this machine. Typically, a lifespan of a survey instrument is 10 years. After that, part supplies, depending on how popular that instrument is, dries up. So maybe you get 12 or 15. At 25, we're long past its service life. It works, but there's no longer software upgrades for it. There's no more spare parts for it. I have 3 batteries to work, one of them only marginally. When those batteries die, I cannot get batteries for it. So at that point, I either go back to measuring tapes and, compasses, or we replace the machine, which is what I'd like.
Yeah, and I would just say, having in-house survey expertise is really, really, really valuable. Chris's guys are out in the field all the time doing work. So without the survey equipment or renting it is going to be, in the long term, is going to be more expensive than reinvesting in new stuff.
We just wrapped up the field work for the Parks Garage facility. So we'll put that together for Joe's feasibility study for that architect. We did the survey work for the other streetscape grant for Stoddard and Maine. We wrapped that up this past spring. Started back in the fall with my intern. Just didn't finish it before he went back to school. So what else did we do? We're planning to do the Chapman Firehouse for Joe for that project. That's on our radar. We did the Evergreen Street area, which is a drainage project that hasn't come before you yet. We did the survey for the replacement of the corrugated metal pipe on Cedarwood, which is a project that I will bid this year if I have funding for it. We did the same for the cobblestone culvert
Yeah, well,
Yep. I'm sure there's others I don't remember, but, once I had the ability to get a survey crew out there, we started getting ahead of our backlog. Another year or so, we should probably have everything I can think of surveyed.
Thank you.
And then somebody will think of somebody more, I'm sure.
Sure we will.
Council Mankey?
Just one more, it's not a question, but a request. Can we get a copy of the fund balances for these, your various funds when we get a
I
chance?
can make more copies when we break, actually.
Thanks.
So,
You-
but
You
there-
anticipated my
Yeah,
request.
but in the meantime, on Appendix A,
Is it here?
it's
It's there.
there is, I think it's hard to read a little, it's small, but Appendix A, starting on page 24, the column on the right shows the fund balance for all of the different funds or accounts.
28.
24.
24.
I don't have a 20.
It's 7 pages to go.
Appendix A?
Wait a minute.
Yeah. But what Janet has is larger font, so she can,
Larger.
yeah.
Easier to read.
Thanks. I can't see.
Deputy Murata?
Yes, just one other question that came to mind is we were talking about the Avenue streetscape. And you had talked about demolition of the old dry cleaners that's been sitting there vacant. I love the idea of, always having a little bit of green space and parks, an area where people could sit and socialize. Is there any concern, once that demo occurs, with any kind of contamination of that?
It's a dry cleaner. So yes, a lot of concerns about potential ground contamination from dry cleaning fluid. Now, just something I should have said sooner. The demolition of that building is on the private property owner. That's not part of the grant. And remediation of that property will be something that property owner will work on. He happens to be a civil engineer, a principal in a major firm. He bought Giovanni's for his daughter, who was a baker. So, he knows what he's got to do. We've discussed this. And that obviously will come up. At the moment, I can't say that the site is contaminated because it hasn't been tested. So I don't want to get a cart in front of the horse. There's always the outside chance that there's nothing or very little to worry about. But it is something that we're going to look at.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions from councilors? Public Works and Engineering? Seeing none, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
And next up is Community Development, Library and Parks and Recreation.
I'll just make one observation about this before you get in any questions. So Candlewick Park, $450,000. We did apply for a STEAM grant for that park. I know that, the town has indicated in the past that it wants to do one neighborhood park renovation per year. We do have, that would be Candlewick for next year, with the caveat that we also applied for a grant. I don't know what the odds are that we get the grant, but just pointed out there that this is a sort of belt and suspenders approach. There's a chance we won't need that 450 should the grant come through. And I think we'll find out about the grant in April, if memory serves.
When in April?
I think very close to the moment of budget adoption. Yeah.
Oh, that's very good, thank you. Questions from councilors? Council Floyd?
Thank you, Mayor. I looked in the current balance section on page, what did we say, 24, and I couldn't find the land acquisition funds. Do we know the current balance and what?
Yes,
was the last
it
time there was a
is.
withdrawal?
When Janet comes back, Matt, she'll be able to find that number in a New York second.
That's fine, I'll hold it.
Yeah, give her a second and she'll.
Can I ask another question then in the interim? Just briefly, thank you, John. The comprehensive revision of zoning regulations, obviously, you're not proposing any additional funding for that. I know that hasn't started yet. Do we anticipate the 50 is going to be all that's necessary to complete that? when?
That's Paul's, that was Paul's recommendation. Yeah, he thinks he can do it with that.
Thank you.
But I mean, it's the ongoing battle that, you know, so, right, so, you know,
Sure.
but I think that's a nice chunk of change for him to get a lot done.
Thank you.
And we also have that raise grant. I don't know, that's a federal grant. That's that CROG grant for the turnpike too.
Right.
That might be on hold because everything's going on in Washington, but yeah, ongoing battle.
Thank you. Now I'll wait for Janet.
That was it. Anyways, Councilor Draco.
Well, I have a little bit of insight. The open space fund or the land acquisition fund, that was in an I believe in an ordinance or, that was passed years ago when the whole Cedar Mountain debacle started. And the town was mandated to put money into this fund every year. And what happened is for a period of years, it was ignored. So nothing was put into it. So we've been trying to, until about 2 or 3 years ago, it was noticed that, hey, nobody's paying attention to this. So we started putting money into it. And as far as I know, we really haven't acquired any, but it's in order to, should a grant come up where the town has to put in matching funds for open space and whatever. So in my opinion, it would be it would be against town regulation, first of all, because we're mandated to do it. And it's a minimal amount every year, but it's just showing, if we ever get a grant opportunity or if something does come up, we are committed to open space, not just by words, but by actions as well.
Thank you, Councilor Rodrigo. I'm familiar with the history. That's why I asked what the current balance is.
Janet, the questions come up about what the current balance of the open space acquisition fund is. I can't find it on the.
It's not be on there because that's transfer to it. It's not in CIP transfer. I'm gonna look it up.
Thank you.
The second question, the question I have is on, you mentioned Candlewood Park, right?
Yep.
I'm just curious, $450,000. I know you said it might not be the entire amount, but how does the size of Candlewood compare to the other? Are we funding every park equally because of the acreages of the parks are not equal?
Yeah,
And I think that's a
Janet, you have
smaller
any insight
park.
into that?
Those prices have gone up due to material every year. So if you notice, for a couple of years, it'll be the same, and then they're building in inflation. So as we're doing more projects and we're doing every one a year, we're finding the costs are increasing. So I don't think it's dependent on the size. I don't know if Bill's online to confirm, but I think it's the fact of what they're replacing, the costs have increased.
Because again, some of the parks are quite small and.
Bill's online. He's got his hand up.
Yeah, Bill's.
Yeah.
Probably better.
You want me to let him
Scott,
talk?
can you upgrade him to a panelist? Much better. I can see this better. Thank you. Bill, you wanna answer, anything to add to Councilor Bedrejko's question?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. Yeah, basically, the playgrounds have been designed approximately 45 feet by 60 feet for handicap accessibility purposes and for play for all ages. And the parks, just for your own information, the neighborhood parks, from our calculations from a new company that's following everyone's cell phones, is our 6 neighborhood parks are averaging about 40,000 visits per year from the neighbors. So the acreage really doesn't matter as much because, say, at Seymour Park, there's more grass, but that's open space for, say, soccer, kickball, whatever neighbors want to use. Candlewick becomes expensive because there's a little bit of a hill there, and to make the 5%, 2% engineering and ADA issues, we have to spend some money there. But Janet was correct. Steel went up 2 years ago, 22% for the playgrounds, the major component that it's made out of. So with the rising costs, that's really the big kick for us for playgrounds. It's not size.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
Gail, to answer your other question, the land acquisition fund has a balance of 172,166.
It's not gonna buy Cedar Mountain, I guess.
And then just on
Okay,
that question too, Janet, the last time there was any withdrawal from the land acquisition fund, when was that last time? Long time
Within the
ago.
latest, over 8 to 10 years.
Thank you.
Only question I had, on the drainage from Martin Kellett soccer field, we're doing that in 29-30. Is that when we're putting, that's the plan to do that by then?
That's what it appears, yeah.
Any other
We
questions?
might-
for council? Yep, go ahead, Bill.
I'm sorry, I just want to add that we're trying to do bits and pieces of that program. Mayor, I know it's a big problem. It's been a problem for 30 years. And I don't know why anyone has never addressed it before, but we're working with Stonehenge and Steve Woods to try to come up with a plan. I believe I'm meeting with Lou Giacomowitz and Jason Tuesday with some people from Stonehenge to see if we can do a beginning stage fix on a smaller scale with a plan to go bigger and to eliminate the water from that. The Portuguese club, we have about 12 adult teams that play there, plus all the youth teams. And it is a potential, it's an ongoing problem.
Yes, the adult league that plays there has figured out that I live right over there, and they come to my house now to talk to me about it, so.
All right, well, maybe in 10 years we can fix it.
Very good. Thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.
We'll get your big shot back.
Appreciate it. So we'll move on to education and equipment replacement. Any questions from counselors on this? I know we got a good explanation the other night from the Board of Ed when they were here about that, and we heard it at their meeting, so I don't have any additional questions. Equipment replacement, any questions on that? All right, very good. And I think that's it. CIP. We don't go through the appendices. All right. So that was the equipment reserve. Now we're moving on to human services. And our big book.
And regarding the health district budget, I guess the first one, 511. Charlie Brown will be here at your council meeting as the presentation next meeting, the 25th.
Okay.
So to the extent you have, specific questions, probably best way to left till then.
Okay. Where are we at starting? So it's 5. Which one is? 610. Nice. All right, 061. Questions from councilors? Council Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. Two very brief questions. One, 8220, other contractual services. This was for, if I recall, hoarding relocation. This was funds for hoarding relocation. Just if we could get some information on how successful that program has been with that funding. And then 8225, special needs. That was that homelessness prevention pilot funding. I know we got a presentation from Carol about the effectiveness of those funds. They weren't all that effective because you can only go so far, but if there are any suggestions about what those funds could be more effectively used for.
Yeah, you like a follow-up from Carol? You're looking for more in detail.
Of course.
Carol, is that something you can follow up on?
The other contractual funds
Does she want to come up?
Yeah, Carol, why don't you come up? So, yeah.
I can do that.
I'm sorry, Jonathan. I
No, 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 no,
didn't
no,
direct
it's-
those
yeah.
to you.
Yeah, well, no, but I mean, like, to the extent to which this is a long, requires a long in-depth, like, we can follow up. Yeah, but you give the high level and then we'll follow up.
Okay.
Thanks, Carol.
So the other contractual funds that is hoarding, it's not really technically just hoarding, it's any property that is deemed uninhabitable. Again, that falls under relocation legislation that towns are required to then relocate the person. They're required to pay for emergency housing until they find comparable housing with no financial cap on that. And when they find comparable housing, they have to pay up to $4,000 if there's a differential in the rent that they've now found. So it should be a fund that, even if we don't use it, is funded annually, because we just never know when that would come up. And it could, again, there's no financial cap and it's a legal requirement.
Did we dip into that at all this past year? Did we need to?
I don't
I hope not.
believe we did.
Okay.
No, we almost did. There was a whole water situation where we almost did, but it never came to that.
I know the other question is more in depth, so we can follow.
Okay.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thanks, Carol.
Councilor Draco?
Yes, I noticed, the department does, community presentations on cannabis laws, use, treatment, develop, supportive services for those impacted by opiate misuse, substance abuse, whatever. Are these programs funded by the taxes from the cannabis sales?
So there's both opioid and cannabis
Your
programs.
So there are some funding within our department that are prevention programs that we get small grants for, like through DCF. And then we have the funds from the cannabis that we're working collaboratively with our prevention programs and presentations at the school. And then separately, the opioid funds, I've met with all of the department heads to determine what needs might be, like through police, fire, EMS, schools, our department on, what fits the deliverables of that settlement fund that we can use with that money.
But I add too, the cannabis money, and Janet has more numbers at her fingertips, but is not the gusher of money that I think it was originally hoped for. It's tapering off.
Initial,
Yeah.
when the legislators said, oh, the towns are gonna get money, blah, blah, blah. But they also created a problem by, increased.
Yeah, supply and
misuse,
demand,
whatever.
yeah.
So, and I know that initially we were getting the perception was, oh, we're getting $40,000 a month and blah, 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 blah. And it's way down. It's way down, but yet the consequences of misuse and addiction are growing. So it's just, I don't think.
Just to follow up on, there is 300,000 when we get to the revenue.
Mhm.
That is cannabis tax, and that is put in there to offset Carol's
Expenses, okay, which unfortunately isn't meeting the whole need, but, okay, thank you.
Any other questions on human services? Seeing none. Move on to 0644, Senior and Disabled Center.
I think the one issue is, no, come on up, James. The one issue is, I think around dial-a-ride.
Oh, wait a second.
It's just attracting a part-time dial-a-ride driver, which Jamie's been having trouble filling because of the salary.
Right.
Do we want to check that order or we good?
Yeah, I just want, we have library next, I'm sorry,
Oh.
but,
Did we? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
but in the book, it's senior
It's
center.
a senior
It's
center.
all
Yeah,
under
so you're,
senior
yeah, you're,
services.
yeah, you're here, we'll just reverse it. Yeah, yeah.
Everybody
The
at your
agenda.
time. We'll get to everybody.
Let's not change the boat plan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Very good. Questions on 0644? No? All right. 0645. Dial ride.
Just how many Dollar drivers do we have now?
We have one. We are budgeted, we have space for three. Currently, we have the full-time head dial-a-ride driver. The 25-hour asked me part-time-ish driver retired in February. So we're interviewing for the new position. The interviews start this week. The 19-hour non-union bus driver has been vacant since about the end of 2022, when the longtime former part-timer retired. We haven't been able to fill it because at $17 an hour budgeted for somebody who needs a CDL and a lot of experience, we weren't getting any qualified candidates. So that's why we're asking for a little bump in that salary.
Counselor Page?
Thanks, Mayor. I just, if I'm reading this correctly, on 0644, your ask is a 0.75
Correct,
increase from this year to next.
right.
So I guess my question is, given the needs, and I assume the growing needs, is that enough? I mean, when it doesn't keep us up with the CPI, that, I mean, it's.
We rely quite a bit on donors and in-kind partners and sponsorships to make up the rest. And we've always done that, and we can always continue to do that. The most important thing in there is that 13,738 for whatever that, I don't know, this special, that's for the continued funding of the nutrition program, in
Right.
addition to the other things that we're doing to fund that permanently.
Okay.
And I would add too, that we have, I think where Mitch is going with that question, as far as long-term plans for the Meals on Wheels, the concrete lunch, is we are meeting with Sonia about tapping into foundation money. And some applications are due, so there could be more runway there that gets us well into 2026, knock on wood. But that's something we're exploring kind of off budget. And there was also at the State of the Town, there was an interesting gentleman who stood up at the end and talked about the Hartford Community Foundation or something.
Yeah, we plan to apply for that funding
Yeah,
as well.
so some opportunities there.
Okay,
Yeah, I think so.
and
Yeah, go ahead, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to clarify that. And the last question on this, and we can move on, is this full-time salaries, part-time salaries, are those union salaries, and that those increases are negotiated with a collective bargaining?
Yeah,
Okay, that answers.
there's a mix, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Pacheco?
Yeah, can you just explain the interaction? Because I see our dial-a-ride, vans going around. I see the Greater Hartford transportation vans going around. I see other vans going around. And then I see under your highlights, a tri-town medical transportation program. So how is all this coordinated, and are there cost sharing?
The out-of-town transportation is coordinated between Weathersfield, Newington, and Rocky Hill. And we go to 8 surrounding towns. That's done by a contract that goes out to bid every 3 years, I think. Is currently filled by Ambassador Transportation. That is all paid for by grant funding, but Weathersfield is a fiduciary for that. So we really don't have any budget concerns in there. In terms of the Greater Hartford Transit District and all the other white vans you see going around town, those are all different services that meet different needs. So ours is a curb to curb. Our Newington dial-a-ride is a curb to curb service for Newington residents within Newington only. Then there's something called ADA paratransit, which you likely see other white vans driving around. That's a separate program run by the state, which people need to qualify for. And that has its own costs. And then, like I said, there are other private options that people can use at a cost. Ours is intended to be a curb to curb service, very low cost in town. So that serves that particular need.
Maybe it doesn't belong in here, but when the senior center, when you go on trips, let's say, whatever, are you allowed to use the school buses for your transportation, or do you have to pay for them?
No,
or they give
so
them to you
our
for
trip,
free?
do you mean like when we go to the casino or to
or-
plays and stuff? That's all privately
like coach, like travel tour companies, and the participants pay for those. Those aren't part of our, I mean, we coordinate them, but they're not part of our normal program. So if you were to take a bus trip down to like the casino and then lunch at the shore or something, the participants are paying for that, not
I
us.
thought the Board of Ed said that they loan out their buses to us.
I mean, they loan out the buses. We don't really use them. No, at the senior center. That's the bus trips, the day trips are a completely separate program. Those do come with a cost. That cost, $50 to $100 per person. The people going on the trips pay for them. We don't really use the school buses.
I think they were saying that some departments do use
Yeah.
them. I don't know that they said that the senior center, I think that would be a tough ride for some
Right,
of the
yeah,
seniors on the school
right.
bus.
We
It's a tough ride
utilize-
when I was a parent.
They did.
Yeah,
Chaperoning.
exactly. I did that last year. No, I was bus sick.
Find out how often other town departments use the Department of Education, the school buses.
I will
Did they
say,
say
we actually will utilize the drivers as substitutes and backups, particularly now because we're short, but it's extremely limited because the bus drivers have their regular bus
Right.
routes, right? So they might be able to help us out from like 10 to 1, and then they have to go do their
But
regular.
I think we
routes.
were kind of told that, one of the advantages of having our own fleet was that other departments can use them,
Yeah,
I'd like to see.
we'll get it. We'll get an analysis on that. We can ask Dean Barnes.
Counselor Mankey.
Oh, I had a question. I'm sorry, but my glasses hit the button.
Oh, you're good. All right, very good. Any other questions on 645? All right, we're on 671, Commission on Aging and Disabled. Pretty straightforward. What are you guys printing this year?
The pretty, oh, wow, 300. Flyers. Yeah, that's about it. The nominations for volunteer of the year, that's about it.
That's just out of control, Jamie.
Yeah.
I know.
Sorry.
I actually do have a question. I'm sorry. Imagine, right?
So
The, obviously, they're planning the fundraiser for the Congregate
Yes.
Meals Program in April, right?
Correct.
Is that coming out of their commission budget, or is that any
Well,
funds? for that
no,
coming out of April?
so we're hoping, of course, to cover all of our costs
Sure.
with ticket sales. We're initially taking them out of our donations fund, and then the ticket sales go right back into that donation fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good question.
Counselor Mankey.
Contributions and subsidies of which section?
That is, so technically, the Commission on Aging hosts the Volunteer of the Year dinner each year, and that's what that is. So the Senior and Disabled Center Volunteer of the Year that we have, comes out of that $1,200 budget.
And that's how you.
Pay
reward
for the
your
volunteer
volunteers.
dinner, correct.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. 673, that's the Human Rights Commission. Any questions there? All good. Thanks, Shane. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
All righty, now we'll move on to the library, so guys.
I think the big request in libraries is $10,000 for additional materials. So there has not been an increase in the library material budget in at least 10 years, maybe more. And the cost of materials, the cost of a book is, where it was $20 10 years ago, now it's 30, whether, and non-book media, obviously also going up in cost, all the subscriptions going up in cost. So, I think it's long overdue for that kind of increase, so I would advocate for that. And it's not, in the grander scheme of things, that's not a huge increase. Doesn't really even get us back to 3 years ago, so.
Counselor Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. 8222, the data services, you just mentioned, Jonathan, about the increase in that subscription. There was an increase last year for the same reason of only about $45. This is obviously significantly more. Is there something else in there, or is this subscription is just screwing us this year?
Give me a second. Unless Lisa, you know that off the top of your head? Okay.
Sorry. Data services is actually the money that we pay for the consortium, so it has nothing to do with subscriptions. It's a library
library connection. It's 33 libraries that are part of our consortium. And they assess us every year and they have all these different factors that they assess you upon. And we just happen to have an increase this year. Next year it could go down as well. When they add another library, typically everybody benefits from that. But that's also where some of the money for, we do group purchases of electronic books, ebooks with this part of this money too. But it's the money that's used to maintain the online catalog, the database with all the patron records, things like that. So that's what that data services means.
Yeah, the 10,000 that I alluded to is actually spread across like 4 different line items that collectively will add up to 10,000.
The circulating materials, that's what the 10,000 is for.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions on 711? On the 712, children's services? Questions here? All right. 713, reference to community services. Questions? Counselor Page?
Those were under salaries, that's what half-time salaries that we added one part of 1 year and one part of the other. Is that it? Half one year, half the other. I'm not saying it correctly, but we've already had established that.
Correct.
Okay.
They
great.
actually, as of January 1st this year, that
Yep,
position was funded.
Thank you.
Correct.
Perfect. Thanks.
Very good. 714, library building. Nothing needs to be done in the building, right? Any questions here? 715, collection management. All right. 716, circulation. Questions on that? We added a position on the part-time side. Is that where the increase in salary is there?
The part-time,
That was the previous one, I think.
at the second part of that position was actually in collection.
Okay,
Yeah, collection management, more
Okay.
than circulation.
that's right.
Some of it could be step increases as well for staff, part-time staff.
Yeah,
minimum wage.
libraries is the largest percentage is represented by AFSCME. So because of the settlement of the contract last year, it
Okay.
sort of artificially makes the budget looks like the salary increases are higher than they actually are.
Yeah. Questions on the Hubbard Book Fund? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa.
Moving on to Parks and Recreation and Grounds. Right. We will start with 810. Questions there? Reduction.
And I would just point out here, one of the reasons you see the decline in full-time salaries is one, we have 3 recreation supervisors. 2 of them are paid from the enterprise fund. One of them is partially paid by the enterprise fund. After discussions with Bill, we're proposing to take for the one that's partially paid for from the enterprise fund, increasing the amount of that contribution, which takes pressure off the general fund. And all of that, well, not all of that person's work, but a lion's share of that supervisor's work is really paid for. What they're doing is from user fees. So I think that's equitable.
Okay. Question? All right. On to 831, grounds maintenance. No, they do an amazing job. Their fields are always looking good, so. Shout out to Clay for all that.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Councilman Draco.
Yeah, Bill, or I don't know, Drew, or whoever, I'm just curious, you indicated that last year, the spring prep work at the tennis courts was removed from the budget request. So how is that? Where did you get the money to do that?
That was a mistake on a kind of a munis, the last line of tennis of the sheet got rubbed off on the printing. And we didn't find that in finance and us, we didn't find that for months later. But I think Janet was able to supplement that with ARPA money.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Council Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things here. The first, being 8220 other contractual services, part of the increase is indicated to be for the USDA geese control system. I thought I had heard some information about us pausing that.
No, actually,
What's going on?
so there's two things there. I think
Is the
the,
hallucinator?
no, but that's a good point. There is a follow-up to that. But included in that 32,000 is that the error from last year. But also it does have the goose removal. So the goose removal, we were just to bring it up to speed, we were notified that all of the people at the Western Massachusetts USDA office that do the goose control for this region were laid off as a result of the, Washington cuts. And then subsequently, it turned out that group also does all of the goose control at all of the airports, for example, at Bradley. So if you got rid of them, there would be widespread, goose, not just goose poop, there would be, literally geese related aviation accidents. So I think the powers that be in Washington realized their error and they restored those positions. So we can proceed with goose control for this year.
Great, such
Excellent.
wisdom. Great,
Yes.
thank you.
Stable genius at it.
Yeah.
There we go. Glad we figured that out.
The other question I had was just about, actually, I'm all set in this section. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on 831? Happy to hear the good news. about the
Yes.
news.
Yeah.
Right.
Matter perspectives.
Moving on to cemeteries. 832, any questions there? Let me just put the fees,
And just again, a shout out to all the work they do to keep those.
Yes.
Amen.
For sure. Council Floyd?
8304 agricultural supplies, obviously that's the bulk of a lot of the increase. For fertilizer costs, last year, we had an increase of fertilizer costs of about 2.22%. And this is a higher jump. Obviously that's out of our control, but can we just have some information about why the jump this year?
Yeah, I know we can certainly provide some examples, but my understanding it's just a widespread issue impacting all sort of farmers and agricultural stuff. But we can definitely get you some more information.
We could supplement that with goose poop probably.
Right, there you go. There you go.
Deputy Mayor Rada?
Yeah, I'm looking at 8103 part-time. I know there's a decrease of, close to 4,000. And to fix a miscalculation in the prior year, could you just talk a little bit about that, Bill? What happened last year? I'm not disputing this. You all do a great job, but.
Are you talking about which code are you in?
8103.
832.
832.
832. Okay, the cemetery.
8103
Yeah,
went from
okay.
40 down to 36.4. And it was for a decrease to fixed miscalculation reflects a decrease to fixed miscalculation in prior year.
They only use 19.
Bill, you know that one?
I think that might be a finance thing.
That one was put down last year, $25 an hour. It should have been $20.50.
Oh,
That's the difference.
That's okay. Thanks.
Give somebody a raise by accident. Any other questions on 832? 833 historical properties. None. 834 tree maintenance. Questions on trees? All right. We are going to move on. Yes, we are also parks. Thank you so much for hanging out. Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.
thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Okay.
Take care.
So it looks like the agenda is a little off order from our book. Do we want to follow the book?
I think we should follow the book.
I agree.
That's fine.
All right, so then, in the book.
Because that's where I'm going.
Next
It's way too early in the morning. still.
is, insurance and insurance miscellaneous. So code 0910.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, this is insurance costs.
Just these increases reflect the increases in our premiums, right?
And the benefits?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the last, it's worst case scenario. We're in a third year of a budget rate stabilization program. So then we have a maximum that they can increase the LAP and a projection of what they'll increase the comp. It's still waiting on final numbers, but we always budget what is the worst.
The worst, right.
In the budget stabilization.
930, transit district. No questions there.
Nope.
0940, employee benefits.
And this is one I do want to bring your attention to something, because there is a new proposal here that I asked for. Our health insurance policy does not cover, well, it covers a eye exam annually, but it doesn't provide any, has no coverage for glasses, contact lenses, glass lenses, et cetera. So there is, I think it's $14,000 to cover and change to cover that new add-on to our policy. We're on a employee by employee basis. It's really, really small. It's like $50 or something like that. Maybe a little more than that, $80, something like that. But it's, yeah, so that's the proposal that's in here.
So that's a contractual obligation.
No, it's not a contractual obligation. It's my proposal. I spoke with if council's comfortable with it, the union is comfortable with it as well, so.
Is this consistent with kind of what other towns? are
Yeah,
doing? Pretty
yeah,
much.
we're unique in that we don't offer any,
We want to be
Sounds
competitive.
Oh, yeah, no, that's.
So we're adding this benefit.
this is an added, this is what I'm proposing is an added benefit. So it would
That's under-
cover, yes, go ahead.
That's under medical insurance.
That's under, it would be ground under medical insurance. So most of what you're seeing, so $600,000 plus or minus of that increase is just because of claims history. 14,000 of it is from this new.
Pretty cheap. It's like $5 or $10 an employee a month.
Yeah, it's tiny. Yeah.
It's a big, and it's a good benefit. No problem there, for sure. All right. 950, donations and contributions. Questions from counselors on this?
What's the contractual services?
That's just the total amount of all the donations.
Okay, well, good.
Question on, NCTV. Do we know how much that was utilized in prior years?
They have to send in a request for the donation. Last year, they did not.
Okay. So last year, they didn't request any, so we didn't give them any money last year, so this year, and, okay,
The actuals for 2003, 2024 is a zero.
okay. Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Nine 61 managers contingency. Questions there? 962 special contingency. Questions? All right, so insurance is done. Next, we are gonna be on to debt service and NDC. And so we'll start with code 1000. Questions from counselors? I know this is the big ad is Anna Reynolds is now on the roll.
I've gone out already once for Anna Reynolds. This is gonna be the second. Spoken for Anna Reynolds. And actually, we're trying to finish up the town hall.
So that'll be, so the town hall, when will that be coming off? Or the first part of that?
2040 is what it says, yeah.
46, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so not for a while.
Or no, 2045, sorry.
Oh my gosh.
Jeez. All right. All right, we'll move on to MDC.
Just a quick
Oh, go
question.
ahead, Councilman Maggie.
Just hypothetically, if we were to go out for funding for another big project, what would that look like for people sitting here 2 years, 3 years from now on our debt ceiling? How would that look?
Well, right now, your debt ceiling that we set, when we set the policy in August, was 50 million of outstanding debt at any time.
So what would this number look like, say, 3 years from now if we increase that?
You very little to do, because right now, we're sitting there saying, as of, with the proposed to go out to bonding, we'd be about 36 million outstanding debt as of July of this year.
And this doesn't factor in
So
Wallace.
yeah, you have, so
Doesn't
you have,
factor in Wallace
Yeah.
and the other projects.
so you have 36.5 outstanding right now. We're gonna issue 5 million later this year for Reynolds and Town Hall, so that gets us to 41, 42. And then my understanding is, that does include, okay. Okay, so but then we do
2
have
million
to for John
at some
Wallace,
point. Yeah.
7 million for Wallace, right?
Depends on how much funding. I believe we originally got something saying the state was gonna pick up 75% of that.
That's right.
Been higher than what we had. Really higher than we had.
Okay.
So that
good.
would be between 3 and 4 million when they're done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so. But so what we're saying is maybe realistically, we have 9 million left over once those bonds are issued. So between total outstanding debt and our cap.
Very good.
And
Councilor Draco?
And so anybody's listening, the consequences of, it's not that we can't go above that, but if we do go above that and make a decision, the consequences on another part of our finances are pretty substantial.
When you go out for rating, a lot of your rating is based on how you are financially. We've always gotten a really good gold star, the fact that we are conservative. We don't have high bonding like other towns may have. But on the negative side, they do not like our pension and how much that is funded. So at the end of the year, when I come to you asking you for surplus, that's to try to close that gap a little. So in one aspect, if we're now not getting the gold star for that, they could potentially, if we go high enough, downgrade us.
Okay, thank you.
And that would increase
That
our
would
borrowing
increase your
costs.
interest
Yeah.
cost on anything we went for in the future.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Rada?
Excuse me, yeah, how do we, and I know it's kind of apples and oranges, but how do we compare with, either surrounding towns or towns of essentially the same size, population wise?
We are actually very
We're
good.
low.
When I did the presentation to you guys in August,
Remember.
majority of our ratios and our numbers, we were one of the best around us in comparable towns. Our only issue is that people in our town don't make as much as people in other towns.
Sure.
So when you compare it there on income base, we were in the lower portion of that, which is one of the fears. I mean, can your residents afford it?
Right.
That was the one area we lacked. But otherwise, we were the top heap on everything else. The amount of outstanding debt, the per capita per debt, our debt as a percentage of our budget, all great ratios compared to almost every other town that we compare to, except for that income, the population's income.
I think I remember like West Hartford, there's like hundreds of millions, crazy.
Yeah,
yeah.
We're not actually went out to bond to fund their pension.
Right,
plan,
that's the,
And then everything's tanked.
right.
That was the year
That's
everything
right.
went down, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
Good.
Was it
That was
bad
an
decision?
idea.
Bad decision.
it's an idea. All
Thank you,
right.
Jana, for keeping us on the straight and narrow.
Deputy Mayor Rada?
No, I just asked.
Oh, that was it? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry.
We're still waking up.
My head's messed up. Counselor Nagel.
Good, I'm waiting a second. I have a hearing device that's added onto, so I can hear better here, but what happens with that is there now is an echo.
Oh.
So, and so that explains a little what happened before. So now my question. My understanding, in my humble opinion, is that if we approve to go forward with an additional expenditure for facility or referendum, I'll be blunt about it, and it goes over our debt, are we able to raise our cap before that time? To equalize that out, and what effect? What you?
August, we discussed the fact if any projects go before you again, you reevaluate the policy. We look at what our ratios are at that time compared to other towns. And then part of going forward with the project is determining, do you want to raise that cap? Do you want to change, if needed, any of our debt policies?
And I think just to add on to that, I think one of the big unknowns with any time you have a debt policy is how much the debt policy and the metrics embedded in the debt policy line up with the credit rating agency's formulas. So like, what's the trigger point that we would go from a AA2 to a AA1 or a, an AA plus that we are now to an AA. And those are kind of hard to know. That's why you work with a financial advisor. They sort of have their finger on the pulse, but nobody really knows for sure, like what's that magic point at which you get downgraded. And so those are the kinds of things you have to kind of work with a financial advisor on to make sure you're getting just right.
And if our grant list takes huge uptick for us, that's another plus.
Yeah.
Right.
Stuff like that. So it's evaluating it at the time, as you said, with the FA to really determine what's best.
So we really don't know the consequences because of the fluctuation of all the things we talked about.
Evaluate it when the project comes forward and what we determine to do, what the economic of what our circumstances.
Because I know the public is going, as do we, what is the impact upon the town and taxes and whatever, if indeed we, or the town decides, the public decides to invest in an additional capital improvement project, how it affects them as taxpayers. That's a question, I guess, that can't be answered given what we've just been talking about.
But as we talked about last August, anytime a project like that comes before you, that is part of the evaluation of where you go with it before it goes on to referendum.
It's one of the steps. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other questions on that service? All right, move on to MDC. Pretty familiar with what this is about. We talked about this for a while, but any questions on the MDC? All right. Moving on. We already did CIP. We did equipment reserve. Employee leave liability reserve fund. So 3,000. Considerable reduction, so. Questions on code 3,000? All right, seeing none. Move on to special funds. We'll start code 5,000 is there you go. Any questions on these special revenue funds? Seeing none. Uh, 5002 road aid maintenance. 5004 recreation. That's the enterprise fund, correct?
Correct.
5006, Senior Disabled Center donation. Questions on 5007, Insurance Reserve Fund? 5008, Public School CIP? None. 5009, Health Benefits Fund? Questions? Okay. 5010, Land Acquisition Fund? So there's that, this is for open space, okay?
This is the balance, let's see what it is now.
172, and then we're gonna add another 20. Counselor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to ask Jonathan or Janet, as we cruise through these, are there some unknowns that we have that we should be paying attention to, or is this rather pedestrian and benign and nothing?
The health benefit fund, we already talked about that, the general fund.
Yep.
That's the transfer over the.
Yeah. Because I realized as I cruised through this, I didn't know if I'm missing something I shouldn't be missing, but
I don't
otherwise
think
I'm
there's
fine.
anything major that way.
The cemetery fund, the first one you kind of saw, you'll notice that amount that you see for transfers, exactly what transfers into the general fund to cover the cemetery operation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. 5011, Recreation CIP Fund? Question. 5012, Technology Fund? Questions on that? All right. I think that's. What are we missing? Revenues. Oh, okay. Thank you. There we go. All right, revenues.
This is the one we talked about last time that I will have a proposal for increasing the permit fees, the building permit fees. That would generate another $150,000.
Okay. And for motor vehicles, this doesn't factor in the proposed change. Okay.
Should you approve the proposed change, I will collect it and send out to you to page 1. Which show the difference.
Thank you. All right. Questions on revenues? Counselor Floyd.
Just quickly, Janet, do we know if there's been any impact on the disabled exemption because of the expansion for folks with 100% disability rating? Have we?
Not that we've heard so far, this is
Okay.
the money we get directly from the state.
Yeah.
It doesn't always follow exactly
Yeah.
what we do here. So right now, they have not given any indication it's different than last year.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Draco. I'm sorry.
No, I'll go this way.
Oh.
No, you're good. You're good. No, you're good.
Okay, under 5302, the vendors permits, those are for the people like going door to door.
It could be somebody who sets up a food stand somewhere, different permits for different, we're going to, if you're doing anything that meets the criteria of a vendor, I believe, selling stuff.
But that doesn't, not like at the extravaganza, because Parks and Rec gets that revenue, correct?
Yes, they get the food for the, but if there's any other kind of events, different vendors that aren't, an establishment, saying there's vendor fees.
Okay, because it seems kind of low, considering the number of people that knock on my door. But, and then also under 5405 for rental, no, 5404 rentals.
All right.
There was a real big jump last
We're
year.
receiving for OFI right now. And
Oh,
as
oh.
Jonathan mentioned, come June, we'll no longer be receiving.
Okay, thanks.
Counselor Nagel.
Yes, I was going to ask you just about what Councilor Draco asked about other properties, but also I wanted to know information concerning Indian Hill Country Club. It's on that committee that previous to your coming here, Jonathan, we had met and there was going to be some conversation about what to do with the relationship of the rental and whatever. And then more recently, it's not your fault. I haven't, I don't know if anybody else is on that committee has heard nothing about it. And
Right.
should we have input or not? And I see that it is the same.
Yeah, and actually that might be conservative. We did, Lauren and Joe developed a lease that we worked together on an amount. And we sent it over to the Indian Hills, to their management. I did speak with whoever's in charge of their, whatever you call it, their real estate committee. And he said they were looking at it and it was a fair offer. They haven't gotten back to us.
I actually heard from them yesterday.
Oh, you did?
I had to call them on a completely different matter.
Oh, okay, good.
And Andrea, the business manager, said, oh, by the way, we are going to be reaching out next week to start setting up some meetings to go over the lease.
Okay, so there's a chance the actual may be higher, I think, but I think it's probably at this point, we don't have enough information to take it higher.
So it is what it is right now. It
Right
is
now
what
it
it
is.
is.
It's not gonna go, it's not gonna go, because the current lease expires, I believe, in like 2030. So it's not gonna go any lower than this.
Okay.
It just, the open question is they want to have stability in their finances so that they can borrow money of their own. And part of that is having a long-term lease in place. And that's where the devil's in the details.
Okay, but as we stand right now, that is the amount more than likely that the town is going to receive. for
It's not
rental
gonna be
on that
less than
next
that.
year.
It's not gonna be less than that.
Not less,
Yeah,
at least. Okay,
yeah. So it could be higher, but we don't know.
thank you.
Councilor Mankey.
I know a few years ago, we allowed the fire department to bill for services if they, for instance, they arrived on a scene and extricated someone from their car. I don't see that appearing here as revenue. Does that appear? I see where there's a road thing for $10,000 for the fire department. Is that where this would appear? It's 6028 fire response state road. That's for state roads. I know they get paid if it's a state road. Come on, but I believe they went to the point where they have had an agency that would bill for it, and they would bill the insurance company for the.
I don't think they've received it. It would have shown up my entry.
Could you follow up and let me know?
I will.
I know they went through the process of hiring some.
That would have been under the charges for services. It wouldn't have been under state grants if they were.
Okay, yeah, that's a state road.
There's fire marshal fees that we do have budgeted, but I don't see that we've gotten anything for the other one, but I will.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Floyd.
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of a miscellaneous question. I know that Councilor Draco suggested last year, a suggestion I thought was interesting, I think we all did, about charging for additional copies of a tax bill. Did we ever explore that at all?
So there's literally like somebody you lose your tax bill and you need to go to James or go to Corinne and get a new tax bill.
Yeah.
Uh,
Remember that one?
Okay, could we explore that and just see if it's?
No, statutorily, but.
Sure.
And charge somebody to actually.
Get their tax bill.
But I'll double check with the revenue.
Thank you.
Councilor Draco.
Just curious, under fines, 5602 to 5607. I mean, in many meetings, we talk about blighted property, we talk about zoning, issues, we talk about littering, we talk about parking, but yet this seems like we're not enforcing.
Well, I will say that we, certainly the overnight parking, there's been a lot of, I don't know the numbers, there's a lot of requests for appeals come through my desk. And I think we need to do it next year. We certainly need to do a better job, I think, of getting the word out that, hey, don't park your car on the street overnight. I know I just filed 2 snow removal liens just yesterday. So,
And it just seems like we're not collecting anything. Maybe because we're doing a good job of enforcing, I don't know, but,
Yeah.
I certainly know, littering. I mean,
yeah,
it's hard to do, I guess, most of these zoning citation. I know there's a couple properties. I know there's several blighted premises. I don't know, it's a matter of, we're just turning our heads, or are they getting resolved? Do you think you can just get us?
yeah, I can certainly, I can give you a sort of a report on like the fines that we've imposed this year or received this year.
I know also the fire department, false alarms, I guess that's through the fire department?
Police department.
No,
Well, that's the police department. Okay, and the fire doesn't, no, I don't think we charge for that, do we?
And I think when you say, think they give them a one-time pass.
Yeah.
but if it happens again, we're gonna
Mulligan.
charge you.
Okay, thank you.
I have one question, as it relates to, the education cost sharing. Special education excess cost, do you guys know if the bill that the governor signed recently giving more special education fund, will that come as part of our ECS? Will it be a separate to the town, or does it go to the board?
What they've signed is for this year, not for next.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so that's already in there. Okay, that's right. Okay.
I wish.
Yeah. Okay, very good. All right.
But it does come as a separate year.
That comes to the town? Does it come to us, or does it come to the?
Our account, and then we transfer it over to offset the expenses.
Okay, very good. All right, any other questions on revenues, guys? Seeing none. Only thing left on my list is health, and you said that Charlie Brown's coming to speak to us at the next meeting?
Yep.
So we will wait for him to ask those questions.
He does finish his budget, but he might have a better idea, so. After
All right.
Thank you for the balance.
Oh, and we also have,
Yeah, no, I
Have
don't.
one other thing.
Yeah, I'm getting in. Item B. All right. So that concludes consideration of all business department budget reviews. We move on to item B, motor vehicle assessment local option. We talked about this on Tuesday. Counselor Page, would you read the long resolution?
Will do, Mayor, thank you.
Sorry.
Whereas on March 3, 2025, the governor signed House Bill 7067, which amended Connecticut General Statutes 12-63 and authorized Connecticut municipalities to apply a modified depreciation schedule for motor vehicles based on the manufacturer's suggested retail price MSRP, provided no motor vehicle shall be assessed an amount less than $500 as outlined below. Age of vehicle up to 1 year, 90% percentage of MSRP. Year 2, 85% of MSRP. Year 3, 80%. Year 4, 75%. Year 5, 70%. Year 6, 65%. Year 7 is 60%. Year 8, 55% of MSRP. Year 9, 50%. Year 10, 45%. Year 11, 40%. Year 12, 35%. Year 13, 30%. Year 14, 25%. Years 15 through 19, 20%. Years 20 and beyond, not less than $500. Resolved that consistent with the amendments to Connecticut General Statutes 12-63 authorized in House Bill 7067, the Newington Town Council hereby moves to apply the modified schedule of depreciation as outlined above for assessment years commencing on or after October 1, 2024. And be it further resolved that Jonathan Altschul, Town Manager, is authorized to submit a certification of municipal option for the alternative motor vehicle depreciation schedule to the Connecticut Office of Policy and Management.
Second.
Motion by Counselor Page, seconded by Counselor Chiniakis. Any discussion? Chiniakis?
Yeah, just to clarify, because I feel like this is something that maybe members of the public don't really know what we're doing here. But just to go over it, so you can confirm, this is about like a $4 difference for a 2-car family.
it was more than $4. It was,
Is it 40?
compared to last year, the I think according to Danielle's calculation, if this gets adopted, the average car bill would fall by $1 compared to the current year. But that obviously would have fallen a lot more if we don't do this. Yeah.
Councilor Floyd?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for getting us those numbers, Jonathan. A question I have, I mean, I'm not very familiar with this. I'm learning about it as we're doing it now, but if we find over the next year, maybe next year or the year after that, that disparity between those two formulas is much different, much larger, is this something that we can choose to, for lack of a better term, renege on?
Yeah, repeal. Yeah, I don't see why not. Yeah, yeah. Right, Janet, I wouldn't see why we couldn't repeal it. Yeah.
Councilor Menke?
So as I understand it, and I guess I think that I agree with Councilor Tanaka, I don't think the public understands most of this, and I don't think we understand most of this either. And I don't think the people in Hartford understand most of this either. They passed this without understanding what the ramifications of the town are. Because it's okay to say that we're gonna cut the motor vehicle tax, but it affects us here because it's great to say we're gonna help out the motor vehicle tax. But it also detriment to us who have to then make up that difference in property tax. We have to charge the money comes from someplace. It either comes out of my left pocket or my right pocket, but it comes out of one of my pockets. So by adopting this, we're actually increasing the motor vehicle tax, as I understand it, to everybody. But if we don't adopt it, we're gonna increase their property tax on their homes to everybody, in a sense.
Robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right, in a sense. And as I understand it, there's probably more people in town that pay their motor vehicle tax. They have more cars than they have homes. So we're spreading the property tax out more by house, by cars. I guess I'm in favor of this because it would spread the pain out more than on the homeowners. I guess if that's how I tried to rationalize this between Tuesday and today, is we're spreading the pain out less than people have homes. So that's my rationale. They're trying to figure this out between Tuesday and today.
Well said.
Well said as the rest of us.
If I tried to figure this out, but apparently I'm.
So to add to that, because again, I understand almost nothing on this stuff either, but from what I understand, prior to HB 7067, the formula was based on Kelly Blue Book value.
It's not, it's technically the National Automobile Dealers Association value, but it's essentially Kelly Blue Book. It's just by another name.
So, but the MSRP is a better mechanism for determining values.
I don't know that that's true. I don't, yeah. But for whatever reason, that was what the state did. I don't know quite the logic.
Well, I'll stick with my recorded comment that I don't know what I'm talking about.
And then we're elected to figure that out.
You'll see that like MSRP is set by the actual manufacturer, where when a car goes to be sold at like a dealership or something like that, it has the markup, which the Blue Book value would consider that markup. So MSRP, it's based off of a smaller starting point essentially. So it is better in the sense where it's going to be more cost effective for like people paying taxes.
Thank you, Councilor Tiniakis. He knows.
Insurance guy.
You think it's a good idea?
I think it's good.
Councilor Gonzalez.
I just, for the public, there's still the option, if your car is assessed and you think it's a ridiculous assessment, you can always come down, and I'm not sure the process.
Yeah,
but
there's
you
still an appeal
appeal
process.
it, and then
Yeah.
they just
Correct.
come out and look at it, I think. I'm not sure what happens, but there is a way for the
Yes, there
public
is an appeal
to, if
process.
something is,
Go to a hearing.
Yeah.
If they had,
So I
and you
should
bring
have
your
my
evidence
car.
of why.
okay. So there's options if needed.
Yes. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Any further discussion on this? All right, we had a motion by Councilor Page, seconded by Councilor Tiniakis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstain? None, motion carries unanimously. All right. Brings us back to public participation on agenda items only. Anybody in the room or over Zoom that would like to speak in public participation, please feel free to come up to the microphone. State your name and address for the record.
Assistant Chief Lapierre, Newington Fire. Thanks again for the opportunity. Just want to bring up, we didn't have a lot of discussion in the equipment reserve line. You know, it's set up a little differently than in the past. We just want to bring up that we currently have one vehicle in that's being worked on right now, the service truck for replacement this coming year. Next year is going to be something that we're all going to have to sit down and work together with Janet and all of you, because we have two pieces coming up for replacement, and it's going to be about a $4 million expenditure. But we need to take action on it. Not only with the price increases, but with the build time of the apparatus is now projected at 3.5 to 4 years for both of the pieces that we're looking to buy next year. So we have to work together and come up with a good plan on how do we do this? Because now we're looking at our 20-year replacement. Just to get the thing built, we're already now going to be pushing 25, 26 years before we get that piece replaced. So I think it's just something that we need to have a time that we can just talk about just this and see what's our best avenue to take to fund them and get the orders in before the prices continually go up.
Right.
So I just want to, along with the other chiefs, we want to make everybody aware so it doesn't come as a surprise as we move forward, as we see nothing's coming down in pricing, and we're challenged every day with unfunded mandates, just like the school board, just like, you know, the taxes, they change it on you and you have to come up with a plan. So again, I think we need to work together and come up with a plan so that we can make this happen.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Anybody else in the room over Zoom that would like to speak in public participation? Seeing none. Move on to remarks by counselors. Any comments from council? Counselor Page.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to thank you, Jen, thank Jonathan, our town manager, and thank Lauren and everyone who's worked so hard on putting this together for us and helping us understand it. It's a lot of information. Thank you very much.
Counselor Draco.
Yes, I just want to thank, Jonathan and certainly Janet, and also the department heads, because I
Yes.
think for the most part, the town budget, although it's not, what we would like, but they came in, I mean, we understand the salary increases, we understand the material, increases, and there weren't, as far as I can see, if any, outlandish requests. I think they really tried to stick to a realistic budget for our town. So please pass on my thanks to them as well.
Absolutely.
Counselor Floyd.
Likewise, thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to say thank you so much. And throughout this, we got to see, I was very interested in a lot of departments trying really hard to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars and finding savings and negotiating new contracts and things like that. And that was really exciting to see because that's the respect that we should have for those dollars. So just want to commend all of our department heads, all of their staff, and then certainly Janet and Jonathan and Lauren. Thank you so much for all your hard work on this budget.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Mankey.
I would agree. I would like to thank everyone who had participated in this process, certainly the town manager and the assistant town manager and finance director, and the department heads. I think that's budgets are never easy. Our personal budgets are never easy. We always sit at the end of the month, say how much money I have left and how many bills I have left and how am I going to pay them. The people out there in the
TV land.
and TV land, people out there in the community in the town their budgets aren't easy either. They have the same constraints we have as a town. They have limited amount of money and a inordinate sometimes an amount of bills to pay. And then I think that's important to remember that they have to foot the bill. We have to foot the bill as taxpayers. So I think it's important. I think our hard work now comes is trying to figure out how we're going to move forward with this budget responsibly, because I think there's things that need to be need to be in here, and there's things that need to be done to move the town forward. It's our decision to, our charge to see what those are and how to move forward.
Counselor Nagel?
I'd like to add my thanks and appreciation to all involved with dealing and presenting this this budget to us. It's difficult. It's always difficult. But I feel that this time around that things have been explained more clearly. What the needs are and what questions we had were explained in more detail by all concerned. I know some of us have been at some of these budget meetings, sometimes at night until after midnight. And when we started these Saturday morning things, I remember being here at 1:15 in the afternoon and still going through it. So I commend everyone in terms of making this process clear and less painful, if you want to put it that way. And we now, with what we have here, something that we individually and as a group here will determine over the next time we meet as to what, if any, cuts or additions or whatever are going to happen. And hopefully we'll find a clear path that at least makes it realistic for all of us, including the public, to realize what this council comes up with from April. Okay, with that, thank you again.
Deputy Mayor Rada?
Yes, just echoing everyone else's thanks to the town manager, to Janet, Lauren, the town staff, and also all of the department heads. We take this work very seriously. I think we can all agree that we still have a lot of work to do. We're all town residents, we're all taxpayers, we feel the pain along with everyone else, and we do and will continue to do our best to come up with the most feasible budget that we can come time for the adoption. There's a lot to review and to work on. And I also just want to thank Chief LaPierre for sticking with us all morning. And your comment or request for, to look in the future, look at the future and to have joint conversations about how things are going to be moving forward with the apparatus and the materials expenses. I appreciate that, and thank you.
Deputy Mayor. Thank you guys so much for being here and for all your work on this. I know you started in like October, right? Or before, so I know it's a lot of work that's gone into this, so I appreciate you all coming on a Saturday and for your efficiency and your efforts today.
Are you saying that this is a well process?
It's a never ending process.
Right, I'm not sure it ends.
It's a circle. All right, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Council Floyd,
Second.
second by Deputy Mayor Rada. Any discussion on adjournment? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned at